Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. Oh, he gets such an official intro. Well, one person gets an official intro. One person you know, and that is Jeremy Cohen. Jeremy, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm great, John. How are you?
I am good. I'm prepared to get yelled at because joining us now.
You already know.
Joining us now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. He is the host of Pod Strickland, the hottest sensation in Knicks niche podcasting. I think it's fair to say.
Biggest asshole, maybe.
As my daughter is never like this, and she's like literally crawling all over me. I think it's because I have you on. ShwinnyPooh, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not coming from MST headquarters like some of us, but yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I'm happy that it is today and not yesterday. I don't have to remember that Elfrid Payton decided that he was fucking Gary Payton. And yeah, that's good to
go. So before we get in, today's episode, we figured what better time to do a little reflecting and projecting. So we're going to revisit some predictions that we all made, or I guess more accurately, Shwin is going to revisit some predictions that I made and yell at me for them. And then we're going to actually look forward to the weeks, months, perhaps even years ahead and see what we can come up with as far as some things that we think are going to happen. Before we get there, though, Jeremy, I have to ask, as you're like George Costanza right now. Your two lovers it's like, oh my God, caught in my own web of lies.
Yep.
So what hat are you wearing right now? Are you wearing the Pod Strickland hat? Are you wearing the Knicks Film School hat? I need to know this.
I'm wearing the marine biologist hat, John. The sea was angry that day, my friends, like an old man ordering soup. That is my hat. I'm sticking to it. It's going to be great. But yeah, I thought like I'm the connector, and yet I'm not, because the fact that you guys get to yell at each other, or Shwin gets to yell at you, has been brewing for quite some time. So I get a front row seat to it. It's beautiful. I feel blessed. I feel like this is the best George Costanza could ever be.
Jeremy's wearing one of those like 50-50 jerseys right now.
But I'll decide based on the end of the day how I'll feel. Like maybe I'll be more 75-25. It all depends on how things go about.
So the pressure's really on. So for anybody who doesn't know, Shwin obviously hosts the Pod Strickland pod, which is awesome, and Jeremy has been co-hosting with him for a little bit now. And they have takes, we have takes on here, so we're try to blend some of those takes together. How do we want to start this off? I mean, I feel like we all made different.
Let's start talking about Elfrid Payton.
Yeah, we could start talking about Elfrid Payton. So let's go back to where we all stood on Elfrid Payton before the season started, because I think it'd be fair to say that he's been the biggest lightning rod of conversation over the course of the first half of the season.
Is it a lightning rod if like everybody other than, eye test fucking Tommy D Twitter, like agrees that he's just not a good player? Like he's real, forgetting if he's a good player or not. He's just not good for the Knicks. Like, yeah. Is that fair? Like, can we all just agree? I think everybody, even the people that defend him, agree with that mostly. So I don't think that's like a very controversial take.
No, it's not controversial. Well, maybe lightning rod was the wrong term. He's been the topic of the most negative conversation, I think would be the easiest way to put it. And I'm obviously the one who has to wear this because I got mad at everybody for having the audacity to get mad that they re-signed this guy for $4.7 million. I didn't think it would be this bad. I guess some people did think he would be this bad. Did you think he would be this bad, Shwin?
No, my issue with it was because I think when you tweeted it out, what your take was like, the reason why guys don't want to come to New York is because like we were aggressively shitting on them.
Oh, that's an oversimplification.
It was. It
wanted to be noted,
but this is I'm I'm not here to paint a good picture of you, pal.
I'm not here to talk about the past. Not here to talk about the past.
But no, like that was more or less, I think, what my issue was with anything. I didn't like the signing. I thought that they could have just like been like, okay, no, we're just gonna roll with what we like these young guys and figure it out. And I also thought that like, I mean, but ultimately the way I thought of it was like, okay, they wanted to have a veteran, steady hand, somebody they could just like bank on being like, this is what he's gonna do every night. And they just went with the guy they knew, who, like, you know, look, for even now, for all the shit I have said about him, and I don't think he's like everybody's favorite on the team, but he's not like a problem. He's not a locker room cancer or anything like that. I don't think anybody's like, I hate Elfrid Payton, other than us, obviously.
Us meaning like, the collective Knick fan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like, yeah, I definitely didn't think he'd be this bad. I thought, I mean, like, who could predict that he would just become a substantially worse distributor? Like that's ultimately the biggest problem right now. Is it's not just like he's not providing spacing, because we knew that coming in, like that was not on the table, but he's not passing the ball well at all. And like, I know that I'm sure that Thibs has told, I know what he wants from his guards, because he's always wanted his point guards to be scorers and penetrators and kind of like up the ante, right?
Put pressure on the rim. That's all.
Yeah, like he's always wanted that. But I think he's taking that too literally. I don't think when Thibs is like, look to score, that means ignore everything other than trying to score. And it feels like a lot of times that he has completely lost the balance, and I don't know what's going on. Like the thing with him and RJ is just weird. Like I don't know what that's about. And like
it's something though. It's a thing.
It's definitely something. And what is also interesting is I feel like half the time when I watch him on the floor with Randle now, I feel like Randle wants to fucking punch his lights out. So I don't know what's going on with that. I can't say I thought that signing was terrible when it happened. I still don't think it's terrible. I think Thibs is making it terrible. And that is a Thibs issue, which is like, if you're the front office, this should be information you bank away when you're making future moves, because you have to be now picking up on like, what are his tendencies, regardless of like, does Thibs know the data?
Meaning Thibs' tendencies. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm sure he knows the data. I'm sure he knows that the lineups with Elf suck. And I'm sure he's aware of that, but he also knows that Payton is able to penetrate consistently and get into the paint. And ultimately he is going to err on the side of that over like IQ being a rookie. And so, yeah, it's for us, we're like, oh my God, like these 15 games that he's had where he looks like fucking Jesus Shuttlesworth are the most amazing thing ever. But like Thibs is like, yeah, but like those other, 20 games and he looks like a rookie, I don't want to deal with that. And I'm just going to keep this really shitty, like, you guys ever have like those childhood, like a blanket your mom made for you when you were young or something?
Oh, hell yeah.
Forever.
I use it for my kids now. Yeah.
But it's like you probably used that for way too long when you were growing up. And it's like,
well,
that's what Elfrid is like. We've outgrown the need for Elfrid Payton because at Thibs's behest, at his requests, at his call bullying of Brock Aller and calling him Hinkie, they went and got him Derrick Rose. Okay, so you've got Derrick Rose, you've got Quickly. We've seen him run Burks at point. There's enough options here at this fucking point in the season with this fucking roster and everybody fucking healthy that we don't need to start Elfrid Payton, and we don't need to grandfather him in every night for 15 to 20 minutes and literally punt on what feels like the first 7 or 8 minutes of each half.
Society has advanced past the point of needing Elfrid Payton. And I think also, I agree with what you're saying, Shwin, in terms of the drives. It'd be better if Elfrid Payton passed on more than 30% on his drives, which is an absurdly low rate, because if he's going to get to the hoop and he's not going to convert and he's not going to pass, then he's just clogging the paint and missing, and then leading to fast break opportunities the other way. So yes, I think it as well. Like I would be in the middle between where we were, if memory serves. Like I remember John and I were discussing how, at least I certainly didn't like it, but I got that it was the best of the shit heap. And it still feels that way because, Teague, Wanamaker, Shabazz Napier, like all those guys that really wouldn't have done much, they still are either not doing much or they're not employed. So I got it. It was more just like, all right. And I was actually listening back to our podcast, John, right before the season, because I was curious.
On Knicks or
no, for Knicks Film School.
Oh, okay.
Because I was curious.
Why are you coming for Alex Wolf's podcast, man?
Only because we did a predictions podcast. That's what I figured Jeremy was referencing. But anyway, yeah.
I would have to go back to listen to that too. But I was thinking of just the one that you and I were on.
Yeah. Okay.
And there were some gems in there. It was great. But yeah, just the gems. Idea of where it's like we felt that Quickly had proved himself to the point where he could be a starter. Thibs obviously does not love rookies, so nor does he like them starting. And then, of course, there's the Derrick Rose acquisition, which I think also affects the trade deadline because the Knicks still made that deal. It's not like they just have had no roster turnover since the season began. So improvements are made, I agree, but it is worth noting, as you're saying, Shwin, how Thibs is going to utilize these guys, because if Elfrid Payton is going to have a worse year than he did last year, and last year wasn't fun, but to a degree that not even we would have expected, that's something we have to consider with the crop of free agents not being great, how you make those upgrades, him not trusting younger players, maybe the Knicks being more hesitant towards trading for someone. So right then and there, it's like, well, what options do you really have left? And I think that's something that we need to pay attention to moving forward, and keep a close eye on for the rest of the season to see how these roles might play out.
Yeah. And I mean, Shwin, you vocalize it as well as anyone could vocalize it. Why? No, I mean, listen, for as much as we fuck around with each other, we very rarely disagree with each other on substantive like basketball takes. I'm not going to stand here and be like, yes, Elfrid Payton's great. We're just all misreading the situation. I personally think, and I thought it was really illustrative when Austin Rivers, when he had the one interview, I think before the last time we heard from him, when he was like, yeah, I heard the Rose stuff in the preseason. It's like it was only a matter of when Rose was going to get traded here. My guess is that the front office figured, like, look, speaking to Thibs, like, look, we can't, their asking price right now is too high. Detroit wants to see if maybe they'll catch lightning in a bottle with their signings and fucking have something. Give it a few weeks. We'll get Rose. By that point, you'll have an excuse to ditch Payton and, do whatever the hell you want. And I think because they had a better record, and this is the other thing, and I've reported this, I'm sure other people have too, that like they didn't think they were going to be this good. So I think the real issue is that if you're Thibs, how do you turn around and bench your starting point guard who has quote unquote big air quotes here led you big air quotes to a 25-25, well, now 25-26 record. I'm not saying it's justifiable, but I could see that being the reason, because, and you want to know why I could see that being the reason? Because in my mind, I can't think of another one. There's no other one that even conceivably makes sense, because here's what I don't think. Briefly, here's what I don't think. I don't think Thibs is stupid. I don't think Thibs is watches film and sees like something that's not real. He sees the defense as not being an actual real good thing. I don't give a fuck what he says in his post-game press conference.
Yeah, I don't care either. Yeah.
So like, what's the reason? Do you have another reason, Shwin?
I think the reason is, and I don't know if it's a Thibs thing. I don't know if like the front office has, told him. Like, I do think it matters that him and Julius Randle have the same agent. I definitely think that matters.
Julius and Elfrid.
Yeah, that is not some, like, I know that people don't want to hear that, and they like, oh, it should just be based on merit. It's like, shut the fuck up. This is not like little baby basketball. Like, this is a business. You have to kiss some ass to get, the deal you want. And look, let's be real. If the price of getting Julius to extend this offseason instead of waiting for next offseason is we have to bear through. This is like us, right? This is like in Shawshank when he's coming out of the fucking jail. That is what this season of starting Elfrid Payton is. It's just like 72 games of shit. Yeah. But at the end of the shit, if you're like, yeah, but Julius Randle is going to lock in at a much lower price, and that gives you like a clarity of mind, right? Because like, as nice as this season has been, I think there's still a lot of like uncertainty of what the Knicks are going to do. If Julius Randle locks in at the end of the season, now you're like, okay, Randle and RJ for sure. Those are two guys that you're like, these are, whatever we're doing, these two guys are central to whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
So it gives you kind of like, two pillars to just be like, okay, now we know what we need around them, right? You need shooting, you need an actual fucking primary, a penetrating guard, whatever, but these things that you need. So I think like that is part of it. I also think part of it is like Thibs is an old school guy. Okay. And who did Thibs, learn from? Who did he come up under, right? He came from Jeff Van Gundy. Yes. What is the craziest, most frustrating bullshit stuff that Jeff Van Gundy did after the Marcus Camby trade? You can go back and watch those playoff games.
Yeah.
This fucking
started
guy,
Chris Dudley.
This fucking guy would play Ewing and Ewing, like, this is not prime Patrick Ewing at this point. We're talking about like Ewing, who was clearly hurt, clearly not the same guy, and Chris Dudley, who is Chris Dudley, and you could literally
Chris Dudley, wherever he is out there. I think he's actually made a nice living for himself after basketball.
I'm sure. Being a fucking MAGA Republican. But like
he's a congressman, right?
Yeah, he's MAGA.
Yeah, okay.
But if you go back, you can literally, I'm telling you, go back and watch some of those Miami playoff games or the playoff games in '99.
I remember.
There are games where like he's literally like Camby's killing it, but he's not allowed to come in the game until like the start of the second quarter or the start. It's the same shit. He's from the same. He believes the same things. That's why every single time Jeff Van Gundy says something about a player in the Knicks or about the Knicks generally or anything, you should listen because they clearly still talk. They're clearly best buddies. So when Jeff Van Gundy before the season is saying stuff like, "Oh, I don't know about Mitchell Robinson," I don't know, and then all of a sudden it's like, all of a sudden in the middle of the season, Thibs changes his tune on Mitchell Robinson. That should tell you like, no, Mitch did something. Like he's done something since Thibs has been there that has made Thibs to some extent revisit his opinion or what he thought of Mitchell Robinson. Yeah. But yeah, like I do think that there's stuff going on with the whole Payton shit that is beyond just like, and I also think like, you're probably right. I think there's like a lot of these older school coaches, I think have this like whole, like loyalty to fucking the guys that got us here kind of shit. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why he thinks Elfrid Payton got them there. I think you could argue that Payton got them there, but not in a positive way. But no,
if anyone's arguing that Elfrid Payton has helped their efforts this season, I apologize. I don't agree with you.
Just today, for what it's worth, I had the same thought, Schwinn, in terms of like, if you keep Elfrid, is that going to help Julius lock into something better, something beneficial? But then I had the thought of like, well, what if it doesn't? What if now we've had Elfrid Payton playing meaningful basketball for a team? Right. And then it's the idea of, well, why does Leon Rose have to say, like, throw a bone to CAA and Aaron Mintz to be like, here, look what we did for your boy Elf, because this guy ran CAA. So it's not like he has to give back.
Why can't he just Ari Gold them, man? Why can't he just?
I agree.
The only other thing I'll throw out there,
you know that scene where he the guy gets eye surgery and he writes on the wall. He's like, can you read this? And it just says, "Get the fuck out." That's what he needs to do to Elfrid Payton.
Yep.
Oh my god, I would love to just watch.
But the reality of the situation is, I think we all agree, and then we'll move on to some of our other things that we said about some other players you just brought up on this team before the season. I think we all agree that the best version of this team, it doesn't have Elfrid Payton coming off the bench. It has Elfrid Payton out of the rotation, and he's rolling with, Burks, quickly, Frank. And that's why I think last night was so frustrating seeing, Kyrie just like, what's the meme where the children are on like the guy's lap or like the child is on the guy's lap. It's like, I'm your daddy, that type of thing.
Oh, it's not the lap. It's like,
on the shoulder. There it is.
Children should be nowhere near the lap in that meme, but I know what you're saying. Yes.
Well, whatever. It's kids in it. Okay. So that was Kyrie. Kyrie had Elfrid on his shoulders.
But not in Elfrid Payton. Like I'm sorry. I just gotta say, like, that was the most ridiculous. I've been fuming about this the entire day.
You messaged me last night. You're like, I am gonna have a rant, so that's why I was prepared for this.
I could not. Oh my god! Like, I cannot understand. You are getting absolutely fucking roasted the entire night by Kyrie Irving. There's one play right in the beginning of the first quarter where Payton is like trying to like get all up, right on Kyrie, bully him, push him around.
That was fun.
And like, mind you, Kyrie is not a big guy. Kyrie just bodies him into this, like under the rim and makes a layup. That's like, just get the fuck out of my face with this shit. I can't deal. This guy's entire thing that everybody, his defense is so good. What fucking defense does he play? Who is he locked down? Name me a star player Elfrid Payton is locked down. I can't think of one. I know that we got a motherfucker on the bench who did that shit when he was a string bean at age 19 at the Garden to one Kyrie Irving. Okay. Like we saw this shit a month ago. The Nets were just toying with the Knicks, absolutely toying with them. They had Harden play the entire game, and they had Kyrie on the floor. Frank comes on the floor, and neither of those guys wanted anything to do with him. They could not get past him. They don't want anything to do with him. And you can go back and you can watch every single time Frank has come up against James Harden or come up against Kyrie Irving. He gives those guys problems. And
it makes them work. Whereas last night, Kyrie Irving was looking at Elfrid Payton like a buffet.
Randle made him work harder than Elfrid Payton.
He did. And for the clip about, Kyrie, like faking Randle out of his shoes the one time, like that was the exception, not the rule. Randle like kept it honest in front of Kyrie last night. But it was right there for them. They didn't take. And the reasoning why the last reasoning I think that Thibs might have is just the notion of like, and again, this is, I don't want to get into a whole thing, but like the notion of set roles, right? Which is why we don't see Randle at the 5, which is why if you're going to have a penetrating, like,
okay, but like, no, that's bullshit though, because if he believes in that, he has literally changed Frank's role like 5 times in the last month. Okay.
Frank, out of necessity, I think, when there's been injuries.
Is winning games a necessity? Because
I think he sees him if with a fully healthy rotation, I think we could agree that Thibs sees Frank as a wing.
He needs to get LASIK then, because I don't care. Like, what is Elf like, if you can move around Frank's role and you can move around Kevin Knox's role and you can randomly use Kevin Knox at the 4 because the Bucks are playing zone defense and you just stretch the floor out. Like, if you can do these things with them, why the fuck can't you do it with the experienced vet who's been through all this shit and has experienced way more? I think that's a cop out. I won't accept it. I think
you know why? Because Elfrid's an older guy who's like with the agent and the whole thing.
Is a fucking loser. Like, I don't care. Like,
Elfrid Payton, if you're out there, what's the fake Twitter handle that we're all convinced?
Elfrid 6 or something, 63
or like Knicks fan 63.
Knicks fan 63. If you're out there listening or whatever, I could say that you're a nice guy. But
my last thing that I will say, right? I've heard this argument too, is that Elfrid, he does what Thibs wants him to do. He plays his role. He listens to instructions. If that is the case, then last night is proof that is horseshit, because the Knicks made a comeback in the 4th, which they shouldn't have even been down in that game. I'm not trying to pin this on Elfrid Payton. They didn't lose the game because Elfrid Payton. They lost the game because in the 3rd quarter, I mean, I guess kind of Elf, but like it was Elf, RJ, and Randle decided in the 3rd quarter they needed to turn the ball over as much as possible.
And Rose couldn't shoot for shit.
Yeah, and Rose couldn't shoot for shit. And then in the 4th quarter, they decided they should not get any rebounds. But they closed the gap because they're down 109-103. Okay. And then Thibs is just like, fuck this defense. We're just going to double Kyrie as soon as he gets across half court every single time. Yeah. And so they do this. They get like 4 or 5 stops in a row. And then Elf, I was so ready to like be like, man, Elf had a really nice stretch from Elf here because he hits
a couple of baskets.
Gets a couple of
baskets.
The 2-point game, and then he comes down and he does his Gary Payton shit, where like he just turns around and he's like, "Nah, I don't need help. I got this. I got this guy. I got this." And Kyrie, I swear I could see like the drool coming out of his mouth because he was just like, "Is this a joke? Like I've been killing everybody one-on-one, and now you've got this guy on me who doesn't even have his crazy floppy hair anymore to distract me." He just killed him. But like he literally changed the defensive play call on his own. Okay. And I know that like, I think you or Jeremy, or maybe both of you tweeted about like how Thibs nodded. I think in that situation,
I didn't. Sure.
Thibs can't be like, I don't think he's going to start screaming like, fuck you. Like, it's just not going to happen. I think he's like, all right, Elf, like it's too late. That's what's happening now. Okay, fine. What happened, and the Knicks lost a heartbreaker, and there were other reasons for it. But that play right there, like that's an indication that he's not just like this fucking saint who just like, if you want to know who does exactly what Thibs wants, what will do exactly what Thibs wants every single time he's on the floor, Frank Ntilikina. If Thibs tells him to go out there and take a shit on half court, I promise you, Frank is taking an X-Lax before the game and taking a shit at half court.
Jeremy, what were you going to say?
It almost feels like players like Frank or even Knox are penalized because they're versatile. Like they can play in different roles, and yet because these other guys are stationary in what they can do, they're the ones who get preference, and also because of the fact that they are older. And it feels like, what was the main goal here? The main goal has been, yes, obviously win games, but we want to see development through it. And when you have a player like Frank, who is in the last year of his contract, when you have someone like Knox, who knows what's going to be next year when he's in his last year, how you're going to go about doing that, it'd be nice to incorporate them into the fold when your other guys are struggling. And Tibbs's agreement when Elf was like, no, I got this, I can handle Kyrie, to be like, yeah, you got it, it's on you. And then we see that he sinks a three, the game is over, and we just know that there aren't going to be any repercussions of any sort. It's really frustrating as a fan to watch. And, so one of the things I actually managed to look up, with Julius on and Elf on, there have been 2,104 possessions. The differential has been negative 2.7. That's the 38th percentile. But with Randle on and Elfrid Payton off, 1,540 possessions, not that far off from both of them together. Differential of plus 8.2. That's 90th percentile. So again, it's like the math is there. Thibs is fully aware of it. And it seems like there's this kind of like unspoken rule of going in. And I know that Popper asked the question, but it seems like a lot of beat writers might be a little bit more respectful because they don't want it to come across as criticizing Thibs, because that might not be the way about it, especially in a Zoom call. But it's right there. It's so evident that it just hurts to see games that are winnable just turn into losses because the margin of error is so small. And I understand, like the reality is that the Knicks finishing 6th versus 9th or 10th, like it's not really going to matter, but it does in the sense that 6th, you avoid the play-in completely. And then 7 through 10, there's still seeding. You can get home court advantage. You can only play one play-in game versus 2. There's a lot that's going on, and it just sucks to see the opportunities fall by the wayside because of a player who will not be here long-term.
It makes, I think it matters. I think every win matters. And I think that's a good transition to a couple of other guys on the roster. So I looked this up earlier today. Here's a prediction that I had. This is in black and white. I wrote this in my appropriately named newsletter before the season. Predictions. My first one, RJ Barrett will lead the league in minutes and Julius Randle will finish in the top 10. So as of right now, Julius Randle has played more minutes than anybody in basketball. RJ Barrett is, I think, fifth or sixth. Yeah. However, if you look up second half minutes played, so minutes played in the second halves of games, Julius Randle is still first. And it's the gap between first and second there is actually within a minute or two different than the gap between first and second for overall minutes played. So really the brunt of the minutes are in the second half. And second is RJ. So no two players in the NBA have played more second half minutes than Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. I think to your point, Jeremy, Thibs, like the notion that like wins, like every win is worth its weight in gold to this man. And I think we're seeing now potentially that mentality to, the downside of having that mentality rearing its ugly head. We all
just look at the minutes distribution since Elf has come back, the minutes distribution has made me want to fucking punch.
Well, what in particular about it has
quickly gets quickly got
quickly playing less. Yeah,
Toppin has he actually played well. He actually looked okay, and he can't get an uptick in minutes because the Minnesota game is a perfect example. It's a perfect example of this. The Knicks are up 13. Okay. Minnesota makes them, they get an and one because they put Obi in a pick and roll with Taj, whatever. It cuts the lead to 10. Obi played well in that game. He was actually playing well in that game.
He was good.
His reaction, his adjustment in that moment isn't to call a timeout and just gather everybody and be like, hey, look, if they run that pick and roll again, do this shit. It's immediately got to take Obi out and put Randle in. And then within a possession after that, IQ's last contribution to the game is basically to dive on the floor to get a steal. Okay. And then he comes out, and the rest of the game is just vets and RJ. And basically, like, if you look at the minutes over the last, however many games since Elfrid Payton has come back, it's become increasingly just vets and RJ. And it's like Obi is playing less and quickly has struggled. I'm not like debating that. He definitely has not been as good as he was, for most of the, like, I'd say the last month or so he's struggled. Let's say post All-Star he struggled.
But really, in particular, the last 6 games, I think I looked up today, I think he's shooting under 30% from the field the last 6 games. So that's not been great.
So my point, though, is like, it feels like, okay, when Quickly struggles, he's held accountable for it. And that is fine, and that is perfectly okay. I was not clamoring for Quickly to come back in the game last night. I was okay with him not playing much last night if the same standard applies to everybody else, but it doesn't apply to everybody else. And it's just bizarre because, like, Quickly, there's evidence in so many games this year, right, of Quickly being a driving force to us getting a win. Most notably was the Washington comeback, right? When Thibs pissed away the end of just the beginning and end of the first half, and then he pissed away the start of the second half because he had to fucking, play the Elf minutes and just like, and it's just stupid because, okay, this is another example. He starts Elf and he starts Frank for some reason at the 2 with him when Burks is right there, which makes no sense to me. And then Frank struggles and Elf struggles. Elf stays as a starting point guard. He gets more minutes actually from that point on, and Frank is just out of the rotation. It is bananas. It makes no sense. And if the point is to win games, you're not maximizing your odds of winning games to what he's doing. And I just feel like he's losing margins now. Like, you can get away with losing margins against Minnesota, even though they didn't, right? You can get away with losing margins against the Orlandos of the world,
Washington, and these bad teams. Yeah.
You don't get away with it against a team like Brooklyn, even when they're shorthanded, or like Milwaukee or Miami. Like, you're not going to get away with that. And it's also frustrating because we've seen him, when shorthanded, actually coach better, actually make more creative adjustments. Like in the last in the last Brooklyn game, we were shorthanded. He played Randle at the 5. He started switching screens more often. He knows how to. He's one of these football coaches that's like, well, I want to be a run first team, and it's like, yeah, but like fucking Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. Yeah, but we want to establish the run. Okay, but Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. It's like, what are we doing here? What is the... Well,
in fairness, though, he doesn't, like, the offensive personnel is limited. I don't think any of us would argue that. And I think the guy, it is quite clear that he relies a ton on the offensive personnel that he feels can actually do some stuff. Jeremy, did you think that the minutes thing was going to become an issue this year before the season started? Are you surprised by this?
No, not at all. In fact, I think we even talked about the idea of just how much they would play based on precedence. And, I mean, again, like I'm conflicted on minutes because obviously you don't want to necessarily see your best players be out there, and yet the science doesn't necessarily dictate that playing them 37 minutes versus 32 minutes a night makes a significant injury, for injury's sake. It's not a huge factor. We just don't really have significant data. We have the knowledge that, playing heavier minutes might hurt, but we don't know what the differential might be. And I always go back to kind of what Thibs would talk about, which is if we play our best players, I think he said, actually, if your opponent plays their best players for 5 more minutes more and you lose those 5 minutes, that could be the difference of the game. Yeah. So you have to have those guys because we know that this is a limited roster. The fact that they've won 25 games to me is fantastic, even though I thought they'd win more than what Vegas had. I wasn't expecting it to be on pace, 32, 31, whatever it might be. So I think keeping that all into consideration, they're doing a fantastic job of propping the team up. And that's great because what we've gotten out of this season has been an all-star and a second-year player who has become very quietly, and according not to ESPN, but nonetheless, a very efficient and productive player.
I did not read that article, and I will not read that article.
No one should. They just, I'm convinced they did it for reactions, but whatever.
You're not a big John Collins guy?
Yeah, not huge. So I'm not surprised, and I'm okay with it as long as they're okay with it, because I think another thing as well is this idea of like, if these players felt that they were being run into the ground, then they'd probably speak up and they'd probably say to management, like, I could use a little bit less time. And I'm sure that the team would understand that, the medical team, and they would relay that message to Thibs and saying like, hey, these guys, they could use a break. And I'm sure Thibs would somehow find a way to incorporate that, because there are moments where, like with the blowout recently with Detroit, they certainly saved some time. They could have brought them back out there, especially when, even if the game got close to 20. We saw Thibs do that at one of the home games. Which one was it?
It was another Detroit game.
Right, where it was like bringing them back. No, the Washington game where he brought them back. Oh, that too, in, and it's the idea of like, okay, well, they could
happen a few times.
They could probably win without bringing these guys in, but I understand if you feel that the momentum is seriously on Washington's side, and that this game is like very close to slipping away, when we've seen in the past leads can evaporate just like that. So, again, like if the players are fine with it, I'm fine with it. And I know that Randle joked about it, saying like with the All-Star game, how he wasn't upset with his minutes distribution because of how many he's played. I fervently believe that there's at least a kernel of truth to every single joke, but I don't think it's to the point where Randle's like, I need to stop playing this many minutes, because that's a problem. I'm sure Randle's thinking like, I deserve to be playing these many minutes. I'm an all-star, damn it. I'm contributing good basketball. I should be out there for as long as I can. And he's not going to get that opportunity in other places. And as long as he's happy with that, as long as he's comfortable playing those minutes, that's fine. That's okay by me.
Yeah, no, I trust their sports science. I don't know. Is it a department? I hope it's a department. I trust whatever those people are saying to Thibs. I guess my area of concern is more like last night, and I feel like this has been a talking point for a while amongst some people, but for me personally, last night was the first time I felt like Randle being visibly tired impacted their ability to win the game. And I think you noticed it. I went back and watched the last 4.5 minutes of the third quarter today, and just like,
why?
He was.
Why
missing.
Do this to yourself, John?
I know. Don't ask. Because I had nothing else to write for the newsletter for Wednesday. He was missing
about like your favorite bourbons or something.
Maybe next week.
I've got. I
want to write about your favorite bourbons, actually.
If you want, I've got an answer for you. Delicious bourbon. It's a nice maple flavor. It's beautiful.
What is it?
It's a local brand, so
we don't want to encourage underage drinking here, Jeremy.
That's true. Well, I thought because I was in the presence of adults that it would be a little less frowned upon. Like driving, you need your learner's permit as long as you're with people who are above 21.
You could. I don't think
some states you can go to a bar if you're 12 years old and drink, like Wisconsin. So,
anyway,
this is Wisconsin. This is our Wisconsin.
KFS. Anyway, yeah. So I thought he looked tired, and I thought he looked tired on offense in the third. I thought he was kind of dragging that, like those segments of the game in the first half where him and Bullock were just like ping bang, the ball swinging, like that was beautiful, and that wasn't happening at the end of the third quarter, and it led to the turnovers and like ball getting slapped away and whatnot. And then the fourth, he was just, I don't know. I mean, Bondi tweeted out that he thought he saw him limping. I guess you could kind of see it.
MSG cut to him at his knee, like kind of tinkering with the brace or whatever is there. So I don't know if it's necessarily exhaustion. It could just be the fact that as games go on, he feels that contusion more and more, and maybe it's putting pressure.
I think so. Like here's my thing with the minute stuff. Okay, here's the top. I'm just going to read off the top 15 players. All right, minutes per game in order.
Oh yeah, I know where you're going.
James Harden, Julius Randle, Fred VanVleet, Harrison Barnes, Domantas Sabonis, Damian Lillard, Colin Sexton, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Jokic, Jamal Murray, Bradley Beal, Jason Tatum, Malcolm Brogdon, Pascal Siakam, Russell Westbrook. Like the best. You look at that list. It's not all of the best players in the NBA, but it's a lot of very good players. And a lot of those guys are the best players on their team. They're basically the version of Randle for, Washington, Toronto, whatever. Teams that don't have multiple superstars that need those guys to be on the floor to be competitive. If you go back last season and the year before, go look at Toronto's minutes per game guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Like they had like 3 of the top 10. It was like Lowry, Siakam, and Van Vliet, I think, last year. So like the best teams, no joke, guess what they do? They played their best players a lot of minutes. It's not that confusing. I don't think anything that is happening is that it doesn't really concern me that much. Like,
do you think it's more just like related to this recent injury that he has, which is what I'm hoping it is? That's my hope.
I think that's part of it. I also think this is like a really weird season, and the season is more condensed than it's been. And like, I mean, if you are in a position to win, like if there's an issue I have with Randle's minutes, it is probably that, like, I think he could probably buy him an extra minute or two of rest each game if he just staggered a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my main criticisms of Thibs coaching. And like, you know, look, ultimately at the end of the day, as much as we bitch about Elf and there's the margins and all this shit, like he's probably winning a lot of margins that people don't want to give him credit for. Like the team is majorly outperforming what's happened. I think we've seen plenty of evidence of player development and good coaching. Like, I mean, look at Reggie Bullock. He's shooting the highest percentage of shots from three of his total shot distribution of his career. You look at somebody like Nerlens Noel. And
they're good shots too, by the way. The shots really that Reggie takes, you feel like they're going to go in.
Yeah, like if you look at, like, I'm not even looking at a stats. So if somebody wants to look this up, check it. I would bet like 60 billion fucking Federation credits that Nerlens Noel has the lowest foul rate of his career. I would bet that.
I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah, I think there's signs of like really good player development, be it young guys or rookies, that's happening on this, or young guys or vets that's happening on this roster, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And like, I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that because of criticisms, which I feel like is starting to happen now, where like he's kind of he's getting a little bit of a victim of his own success here, because the team has outperformed expectations so much. So I think people are like starting to be like, well, we should win this game. Like, why do we not win this? And I agree, like he's making some mistakes, but let's be real. Like there are, just because, like, for example, I think the Knicks would have won the Minnesota game if Quickly played longer. Okay. I have no way to prove that. I have no way to prove it. And all I can do is use the overall season sample to say, yeah, see, like this would happen. But each game is different. Maybe I am missing stuff. I'm sure I know I'm missing stuff that Thibs is seeing. So like and also there's something to consider of like, there's parts of player development that us as fans will never, like, we won't understand it because we have never been in high leverage basketball situations in professional basketball organizations. Like, is there some benefit to him being a short, you know, like short leashed hard ass with Obi Toppin as a rookie, with Quickly as a rookie, with RJ? Like, I mean, RJ Barrett.
We'll find out. We'll find out in a few years,
right? And that's my point. Is like we can be upset. Like, and I actually think what's really interesting is to look at like I look at, like, I'm sure you guys have seen, right? Warriors fans are just like losing their mind about Steve Kerr, and he's garbage and he has no idea what he's doing, and he's murdering James Wiseman's confidence and stuff like that. And he's, you know, they don't have, like, he killed an entire season. They could have competed this year. And it's like, at least for me, looking from the outside, I look at that and I'm like, you guys weren't winning shit this year anyway, because Klay Thompson's hurt. Yep. And James Wiseman is a 19-year-old rookie who I didn't think he was the second best prospect. And if he was going to be good, it wasn't going to be in year one. So what are you really upset about? Like that he didn't eke out, he didn't fucking run Curry an extra 3 minutes per game to get like an extra 4 or 5 wins. Like I don't know. I would
be commending him for leaning into the tank. That's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's
I'd be thrilled.
Easy. And I guess my point is, like, I think from the out, like when it's not your team, it's easier to look at that with some levity and like be like, yeah, that's it. I think for us, and I'm guilty of it too, for sure. Like, I think when you're watching a game like last night, and I wanted them to win that game so bad last night because you got handed a gift. Like, Harden was out, KD was out. Like, you know, I get it. And look, Kyrie was just, you know, he had one of those games. He was amazing last night. He had a superstar game yesterday. And like, it's frustrating to lose that. It sucks, especially it feels like that Minnesota loss really accelerated how shitty some of these losses feel now.
If we had gotten that loss, it would have dulled the pain, I think, of everything of like what has come since, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I just think that like we all should at least accept that like this is why like people have been like, oh, this is why they should have made a move deadline. I literally don't give a shit because ultimately when I zoom out, like when I zoom out, I'm just like, well, this season really isn't about like I want to keep assets so that when we're actually competitive and we're actually like in a competitive window, we have assets to make those marginal moves and to get a player like we don't need an Evan Fournier for this year. Like he's not doing anything for us this year.
We're in agreement on something.
Yeah, in 2 years, hopefully
this is beautiful.
Hopefully in 2 years we're in a situation where we're like, man, if we can get that 17 points per game guy to come off our bench, that can really get us into, the top 2-3 teams in the conference or beyond, whatever it is. We're just not at that point. Like the moves, there was no star trade out there, right? Like the biggest name on the trade market that we could have gotten was Lonzo Ball. And
arguably, we don't know what the asking price was.
Let's just say I'm pretty confident we could have gotten him if we wanted him.
Yeah.
If we wanted him, we could have gotten him.
Yes, if they wanted him bad enough, they could have gotten him, and it may have been the wrong move given the asking price. Right.
And my point is like, this is not like the only star who got traded, right, was Vucevic. We were not. I don't think any Knicks fan is like
big air quote energy there for.
Yeah, I mean, I love Vooch, but come on. But like I mean, and I think there are Bulls fans that are already like who are excited when they made the move, who are already looking at it like, are we sure this was the right move? Whatever. My point being is like it's and you mentioned this too. From what I think, I don't know, I don't want to misquote you, so correct me if I'm wrong. From what you understand, they did not expect to be this good this year.
No, and right? To your just
so I just want to say this, and then I'll shut the fuck up. But I think they actually deserve, and Tibbs deserves credit for this, and Leon deserves credit for this, that they didn't lose their minds. They didn't get so caught up in the excitement of outperforming expectations that they made I think they kept the eye on the target. And I believe this for a while. I think their target is when 2022 offseason comes around, we want to be in a position to trade for a star or sign a star or whatever. I think that is their goal, and positioning themselves for that is their primary target right now.
Jeremy, I think and that was well said. I think we do a pretty good job on our usual show of not falling into the overt criticism of Tibbs. I think what you did well in phrasing just now, Shwin, is that like they've already crossed the hurdle of like a baseline of competence. So all of the things that we're all upset about maybe after this game or that game or whatever, they kind of amount to nitpicks more than anything else, because it's like, oh my God, you've done so much already. And then you kind of get spoiled and you're like, well, why not just give us everything that we want? Because that's life. You can't have everything that you want. That's a good transition actually, because we also wanted to look ahead. And one of my preseason predictions, another preseason prediction, and I think Jeremy, you had some things to say about where this is concerned also, is I thought the Knicks would make a big trade. And I gave myself an out because I said I think they would make a big trade before next free agency starts. So by, I guess, whatever it's going to wind up being, August 1st, August 2nd, something like that. They did not make a big trade at the deadline. I'm a little surprised. I shouldn't say I'm not surprised they did, but I'm surprised, like, again, looking back at what we thought before the season, I'm surprised we've gone this long and they haven't made a somewhat significant move, not because I disagree that they have their eyes on the prize, but because of the cap space issue. So maybe now that's turning forward. Jeremy, when do you have a date in mind when you think there will be some kind of a splash, whether it's signing a player to a multiple year deal, whether it's making a big trade that involves draft assets and young kids? Like, what do you think? Yeah,
I don't think it'll be anytime soon. And that was
not this summer.
I don't think so. Again, like, what is the market out there? Unless someone like Bradley Beal says, I've had it. We tried this experiment. This isn't working. What else is there really to go about and doing? Because the Bulls sure as hell aren't trading Zach LaVine when they just acquired Vucevic and traded this year's pick and the 2023 pick. Yep. So who really else is out there? And it's kind of like how you fit the pieces. Like, I would love to see, if you do re-sign Mitch this year, I'd love to see it on some sort of descending contract so that way you can create more space. Or if he needed to go out in some sort of trade, he's on a lower deal and that's advantageous for other teams. But, in terms of big trades and big free agent signings, I just don't really see what's out there until unless it's 2022 and you can then sign Beal and then you turn around and deal your assets and get something for a star. I don't know what that would be, because again, 2023 rolls around and you're looking at Embiid and Jokic. I don't see either leaving. I think Embiid could get the
Embiid might, if he's going to be Supermax eligible, we should say, and actually not just him, Jokic is going to be Supermax.
Right, and that's a lot of money to turn down. Yeah. And so those opportunities, if they're off the market, then you're looking at 2024, and the Wolves' entire front office revolves around Karl Anthony Towns. So that's going to be pretty tricky. You've got the Suns, who they've currently got the second best record in the West. Things can change over the next couple of years, especially when Chris Paul gets older. Who knows? But there are opportunities there, but they're not going to be itching to trade any of their stars this year, and probably not in 2022, unless it's like a Kawhi Paul George situation. And then it's like, well, what player are the Knicks getting that comes anywhere close to Kawhi in terms of talent with that type of deal? Because it's not Beal, certainly not Towns. It's probably not Booker, who's not going to go anyway. So, it's this whole thing. But I think if we wanted to focus on the here and now, and this is kind of like a spicy take that you had, that
I had a spicy take.
You did have a spicy take, and I'd love to hear Schwinn's thoughts on this as well.
I can't wait.
The idea of we know the ties between Jalen Brunson and the Knicks,
I didn't think this
who's not a star, obviously not a star, but the idea of this need for half court offense and the lack of options that are out there. You've got Kyle Lowry. He's 35 years old next year. I don't see him signing with the Knicks. He still wants money, but I think a sign and trade could work with Philadelphia as well. That type of option, like how you get in there. But let's discuss. Let's try to think of ways that are a little bit hotter for that type of deal. It's like, what is the most that you give up for a player like Jalen Brunson? And I know we touched on this on our pod this past Sunday, John, but now that it's out in the open and we've got Master Rant Schwinn here, I think we should have the conversation.
I think he already pushed back on this on Twitter, if I recall correctly, or maybe it was it Prez? Might have been Prez. I basically said that because someone asked me if you could get if you could get Jalen Brunson and all you had to give up was Mitchell Robinson, would you do it? And my response was I think that would be getting off cheap. And I just want it noted for the record that I would not have said that if Mitch did not just suffer a potentially serious foot injury. I think that changes the calculation here.
So let's turn it a little bit differently then.
Sure.
John, what is the furthest you're willing to go for that next star?
For the next star?
Yeah. Because it's not going to be Brunson, and Brunson's not a star. So if we're talking about the ability to bring in a star to this team sooner than later.
What do you mean? What's the furthest I would go? Like, what would I give up?
Yeah. What's the most that you are comfortable giving up
for Brunson?
No, for just
a
like
star.
What level of star? Like an all NBA guard level player?
That sounds yes.
How about this? I'll do this. What would you? I'll start. What would you give up for like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Okay, I would give up I would honestly give up at least 4 first-round picks. I would gladly give up both.
Depends both of this year's picks, gone. The 23 Dallas pick, one other
I don't even
first that has some protections.
Literally wouldn't care. They can have both the picks this year. They can have the Dallas pick. They can have the 2025 unprotected first or some shit if they want. I don't really give a shit. Because if you get that guy and you get him on his cap hold, and now you have SGA, you have RJ, you have Randall. Let's say you can keep Quickly or you can keep Mitch. Like, if you can make a move like that, you have to do it. I don't know. I don't think that's realistic. I don't really understand what's going on there. And I kind of think I would not be surprised if he's a guy who like gets a way out somehow, because if I'm a third year player and my team is like, well, actually you're too good right now and we need you to develop plantar fasciitis so that you can't play games. I would not be too happy about that. And I think I don't think they're going to give him a max extension this offseason. That's the other thing. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. And I think
where'd he go to school again?
Yes, exactly. But like, and we also know Zach Lowe reported this when he was entering that draft. He begged our fearless leaders, Steve Mills and Scott Perry, to work him out. And because they work so hard, they were like, actually, we can't work you out because we have so many other workouts scheduled.
Listen, they were busy talking to all the agents of all the clients who they wanted to be here.
Yes,
in New York City.
But like, so we know that he wanted at one point at least to be in New York. We know that RJ is Canadian and they are good buddies. From
Canada. That's the answer.
But we do know they're good buddies. And I look, I know this might be a hot take. I do know that playing in New York has a much greater appeal than playing in motherfucking Oklahoma City. I think these are factors that, like, is it likely that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets traded? No. But a week before Kristaps Porzingis got traded, what would you have said the odds were?
No.
You would have, no. Like, these things happen all the time. So, and I think it's going to start happening. Like, it's going to happen sooner. To answer the Brunson question and the Brunson thing, like, I think you have to use leverage there because they have no leverage. He can be either their only leverage is to guarantee his option for another year. And guess what? At that point, at the end of the season, he's an unrestricted free agent. So if he is telling you, I am not going to sign here to be a permanent backup when I can go, I know I can sign with the Knicks and I'll be the starter. Because he would be the starter. As the Knicks, he's the starter. And
by the way, there's not a ton of organizations out there in the league, I think, that could say that to him. Put aside the connections, obviously, between the Brunsons and the Knicks. So it's not just that we have the connections. It's like how many other opportunities are there out there?
And I mean, look, Leon Rose is actually literally his godfather. So
is he literally his godfather?
I think he is.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I don't think he's speaking figuratively. Yeah, and I think that also factors into this year, right? Because if you know that you have a chance at giving someone who is basically blood a starting role, how does that impact how you spend your money this year? Knowing like, okay, well, like we could sign him next year and no problem. We could trade for him, get his low cap hold. That's great too. Low salary as well. But this thought process of like, how does that affect you in 2022 or excuse me, in 2021? How do you build around that? Do you build with him in mind, or do you just kind of do your own thing and be like, oh, well, it works out because we know we're going to get him too. Let's incorporate him into the fold.
Yeah, I would trade for him. I would be happy. I think Dallas would do it. I think they would do it if Brunson goes in there, and they can't even accuse you of tampering, right? Because he was like, yeah, dude, Leon was literally my fucking agent when we negotiated this absurdly player-friendly contract with your idiot GM. Like he can, like if he's like, I'm gonna go to the Knicks. I'm going to go to the Knicks. It's either going to happen now in a trade and you can get something for me, or I'm going to sign there, but that's it. If you're the Knicks, you can be like, okay, here's your 23 pick back. Now you actually can make a competitive offer for a star potentially. Because
it's a win-win if there ever was one for both organizations.
The only loss from Dallas's perspective is like, oh, so we're basically trading Brunson for the rights to our pick back? Like the narrative behind it might be dicey, but I agree it's a much better asset than in terms of the Pistons pick. And it's a guaranteed first rounder. It's probably gonna be like what, 21, 22? And if you're Dallas and you have no other real significant assets in the draft and you have like $34 million in cap space, you need to figure out ways to fill it. You want to go into free agency with a clear hold and knowing how to fix that.
And Tim Hardaway, they have to pay Tim Hardaway this offseason. And I'm 1,000% sure they're not going to do any of this fucking bullshit like, oh, just hold off. We'll give you your max extension. They're going to give Luka the max extension this offseason.
It's a midnight max.
Done. So they're going to do that, and then they're done. Like they're done. Like They can spend whatever they spend this offseason, but then they're done. They're done with significant free agent spending. So at that point, you're getting your pick back is so valuable to them because.
Well, you know what it's going to allow them to do?
Yes,
it's going to allow them to attach picks to Porzingis to trade for whether it's Bradley Beal or whoever.
Look, it's fun to make fun of Porzingis. He has been playing better. Yes. I don't believe that there's no reason to believe in him being healthy, right? But if he plays well enough through the end of, let's say, next season, okay, he's got 2 years left on his contract. If you can attach 3 firsts to that and some swap or something,
you get whoever you want.
That gets you. That gets you somewhere. That definitely gets you a guy. I don't know what guy it gets you. It definitely gets you a guy.
Get you someone good.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think for them, look, ultimately, as nice as losing Brunson isn't going to kill them. And it's not because Brunson isn't good. It's because he's
they
primary
don't
ball
need him
exactly.
as much.
He's a bench player.
Yeah,
that's what he is. He's a backup ball handler for them.
Right, behind Luka, who is the king of primary ball handlers.
You want to talk about a guy who's going to average 40 minutes a game for the foreseeable future? It's Luka Doncic. I would also do the Shea trade. The only reason I don't think that would happen. I mean, maybe he forces his way out, but how many picks do you need if you're Sam Presti? The guy that I know you don't love him, Shwin, because of some of the things.
There's so many guys.
Yeah, exactly. Who could it be? On Windhorst on his I don't know if it's not today's podcast because again they're talking about the 25 or under 25 thing, which I don't care about. The previous podcast, he talked about the Redick thing and Redick's comments upon about David Griffin, GM of the century, David Griffin, and he noted that Redick essentially shares. Well, he's represented by CAA. Zion is represented by CAA. And I think Zion is represented by Mintz. I'm pretty sure. I would imagine he's represented by Mintz.
So we're getting Zion.
So then, of course, me being me and me obsessing about this stuff way too much. What did I look at before I went to bed last night? How much money does Zion Williamson make in endorsements? And as best as I could tell, as of right now, it's something in the neighborhood of $30 million. I mean, he's other than LeBron and probably a couple of the other top-notch guys. It's up there. He doesn't
a year. He's making 30.
Yeah. Maybe it was total. Maybe it was over 30 in deals that he signed. But no, the Jordan Brand contract he signed, I know was pretty lucrative.
I didn't know Zataran's spokesperson got paid that much.
He's with Mercedes.
Cafe Du Monde can only give him so much money.
The point is
he just asked them to pay him in beignets.
The point is, it's those endorsements are not going to go down. They're gonna go up. So if there was, whereas Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, nothing. And that's for I don't know, is Darren Fox hawking? Well, he signed his extension already, but is he hawking used cars in Sacramento? They
have the pizza guys. Sacramento's the pizza guys.
Oh, the pizza guys. If there was ever a player to what you were alluding to a moment ago, Shwin, who is going to say, you know what, fuck it, why don't you pass that qualifying offer across the table? I
knew you were going there. I knew you were going there.
But everybody talks about this. Someone's going to do it at some point.
Someone's going to do it at some point.
Why not?
But it's not going to be Zion because he's he's got his weight shit going on. He's got fucking knee. He's not going to be the one to do it.
If that guy, it's the Durant rule, right? With the Achilles. If Zion blew out his name your body part tomorrow, well, he's not entering free agency, but let's just say for argument's sake, he was entering free agency and he blew out something that caused him to miss all of next year, there would be 15 teams lined up to give that dude a max contract. He's that the allure of Zion that's what it is. So I don't know. He's the guy that I could see being the guy. But we'll see.
I think the other thing would be if he's not doing the qualifying offer, it would be he enters free agency in 2023, restricted free agent. He gets a 2-year deal with a player option. That's the smallest amount a team can offer another free agent in terms of a restricted free agent for that contract structure. That gets him out by 2025. What is anticipated in 2025? It is a new contract broadcasting, which the NBA will see a huge, massive increase in revenue, which will lead to larger cap spikes because they're probably not going to smooth it over like they should have done back in 2016. And then you're looking at all these teams getting this crazy amount of money, sort of like what the Warriors were able to do with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And then it's a different conversation like, okay, well, if you're Zion, you're telling me I get to make max money for 2 years, then I get team control player control. I can go anywhere I want. And then I can go to like the Knicks. I can join RJ Barrett. That to me is a fascinating situation because I do agree. Some player is going to do the qualifying offer thing. They're going to take it with the hopes of getting out as soon as they can.
Or do it like Porzingis did, threaten it and then force a trade or whatever.
But there's enough time where then he can say like, look, I gave them 6 years, the opportunity to build something. We haven't done it, assuming they don't do it. How can we go from there? I'm leaving. I got to go. I'm going where I want to be. This is perfect. So that to me would be how they could set it up without him taking the qualifying offer, getting a de facto no trade clause, and then putting one of the NBA's smallest markets in a position of peril.
Which, by the way, that's the other part of this Lonzo thing, right? Is like, so they traded away Drew Holiday for what's going to amount to seems like a few late a few late first round picks, right?
Yeah.
He looked pretty good the other night. He was the player of the week.
He looked like Elfrid Payton out there.
Nobody looks like Elfrid Payton. Elfrid Payton's an interesting looking guy. Anyway, if they are unable to retain Lonzo, whether it's by sign and trade, whether they let him walk because he signs whatever the offer sheet is, and then at that point, you're New Orleans and you have no money. Like they're not going to have money this offseason to do anything worth really doing. So you're sitting there and you're Zion and you're looking around and all of a sudden you're like, 12th in the West? I don't know. That's interesting. So I to answer my own question, I think they're going to spend money this offseason and I think they're going to spend money on multi-year deals. My bet would be that they're going to get Lonzo somehow, some way that they're going to end up with Lonzo. But I think it may not be limited to one player. I really do think that they are going to go after DeRozan. I know that might sound insane, but that's I could see it. I could just see Tibbs being like, get me him. And then, you figure it out, give him a 3-year deal. So yeah.
Ew.
You wouldn't give DeRozan 3 years?
I'd give him my fucking back of my hand.
I'd give him a year at most.
I'd give him a year. I read, I think you wrote something, you did like the free agent fucking power ranking thing or something. Right?
Yeah, for the Knicks specifically, yes.
Yeah, like, I mean, look, I think DeRozan's become a meme. I've made fun of him many times in my life.
Justifiably so. He came up small every year in the playoffs.
Yeah, but like, look, he's a legit player. Like his passing is real. Yeah. It's like this is the thing that you have to think about if you're a Knicks fan. They're not going to do the tank thing, right? They've already established that, especially being as good as they were. If they were ever going to tank, it was going to be this year.
Yeah, that ship sailed.
So that ship is done. They're not going to do it. So at that point, you got to think like, okay, what is like the lowest hanging fruit for them to get better? Right. And the lowest hanging fruit, which we all know, is just upgrading on Elf. Replace Elfrid Payton's minutes with DeRozan for a year. Like you're 100% making the playoffs. You're probably a 4 or 5 seed. Like you're probably a 5 seed.
I think you're 6, a 4
whatever.
or 5.
Yeah, whatever. You're the 4 to 6. Let's just say you're in that mix. That's fine. If you do that for a year, that's fine. I'm not giving him a 3-year. I want to know who the fuck is giving him a 3-year contract. And if they're giving him a 3-year contract, I guarantee
that's a good question.
I guarantee you, not a single team that is offering him a 3-year. The only teams that are offering him a 3-year contract are going to be capped out contenders that just have a mid-level exception. I'm positive.
Who's a winning team that would give him 3 years?
Miami, if the Oladipo experience doesn't work out.
Yeah, but they're going to go after Lowry, don't you think?
Not necessarily. I don't think they will.
Shwin, you have a good point here. I don't know. Does DeMar DeRozan? Oh, Atlanta doesn't have any money left, right?
Yeah, they spent everything on fucking Bogdanovich and Gallinari and Chris Dunn, who hasn't played a game yet.
Charlotte doesn't need him. I don't know that makes sense anyway. They need a center.
He didn't play at UNC.
Let's see. Celtics have no money. I'm just looking at.
Dallas
that
doesn't
again?
need him.
Who was it that didn't have any money?
Oh, I said Celtics.
That's my favorite song.
Wow, there isn't.
I could see the Clippers
really?
going after him.
Really? Who?
The Clippers would offer him their mid-level, 100%.
No, he'll get. He'll get. But I'm saying if the Knicks were to be like, we'll give you double the mid-level for 3 years, then.
And that's my thing with Lowry too. Let's say Oladipo is really good for Miami. They're not going to sign Lowry. Okay, they're not going to do it because they're just going to bring back.
They'll bring back Oladipo.
Then his only other market is a sign and trade with Philly, and I'm not convinced that Philly wants to do that. I think if you listen to what Morey said, he is saving whatever chips he has because he wants to use them for somebody he thinks is a real star.
Yeah.
I like if you listen to what he said about not making any trades, I think that's very clear. He knows he doesn't have a lot of leeway because of all the fuckery that happened before he got there, but he has a little bit. And so I think he wants to keep what he has so that if a Bradley Beal all of a sudden next year's trade deadline is like, I'm out of here, trade me now, that maybe he has enough then to get him. He's not doing it for Lowry. I think the Knicks are going to have a shot at I think they're going to have a legitimate chance at getting Lowry because you start looking around. The Clippers have nothing to trade in a sign and trade. They got absolutely nothing to offer them. The Lakers, they blew their shot. They had one shot. They blew it. They blew it by
because
not
Taylor Horton Tucker is a restricted free agent. So that's
and like the Schroeder's unrestricted. So how you're not going to get the salaries to do it.
You'd have to do a double sign and trade,
which is really hard, I think, right? Oh,
it's on the rarer side.
Yeah, I leave the nerdery to Jeremy, the nerd mechanics to Jeremy. But yeah, like I think the Knicks are definitely gonna have a chance at Lowry. And I would give him 2 years, $50 million, 100%. I'd do it. I don't give a fuck.
Would you rather? I think I know the answer to this question. Would you rather give Lowry 2 years, $50 million, or DeMar DeRozan 3 years and $50 million?
Lowry, 100% easily.
Yeah,
like I just
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay.
The need for a half court facilitator is just too strong.
And like just everything about what he brings to the table. Like DeRozan is like a guy that Tibbs would get a lot out of.
Yeah.
But Lowry is a Tibbs guy.
Lowry is a Tibbs guy.
Like there's a difference between those things. Like, and you get somebody like that in your program who's like a well-respected vet who has like, look, he did overcome his playoff yips too, right? And he won a championship and all that shit. Like that's a guy who's done a lot in his career. I think that is somebody that like Leon Rose and Worldwide West would probably look at and be like, hey, look, like we bring him in, we get a 4 seed.
And we know they were very interested in Chris Paul, so it's not like they're above going after an older established point guard.
I think they know what getting a guy like that can do for them, because as much as there's been like a shift in perception of the Knicks, they're still like viewed as more of it's a fun story.
It's a cute story. Yeah.
It's a cute story. If you get a guy like Lowry, that gives you a lot more credibility. I think, like, just imagine replacing the Elf minutes with Lowry. Like that immediately vaults you into.
They're the fourth place team in the East.
They're the fourth place team in the East, and they might. I think there's a chance if RJ takes another step, who we should talk about, and I should make fun of you for.
We're gonna close with RJ, but I want to touch on the draft real quick. But yeah, finish your thought.
And like, I think if RJ takes another step, I think if they keep Mitch, he makes another step. Like if Randall just stays being Julius James, like if Quickly makes another step, right? Like, there's no reason Quickly can't progress. There's no way Obi can be worse. I actually have seen positives. I don't mean that.
Couple decent games here, decent moments.
Yeah, I think he would have put together maybe like more promising stat lines if he got more minutes in these last few games. But like, there's a lot of upward mobility possible on the roster. So adding somebody like Lowry, who, look, I've watched him play enough this year. I don't think there's a drop off. Like I think that's what he is. And I think he can sustain that for another couple of years. You add that into what you're doing, I think I don't even know if people comprehend how much of a difference maker getting just
Oh,
a player like that. Like Malcolm Brogdon
Insane.
was a name floated at the deadline as somebody like if you get Malcolm Brogdon on this team, I promise you the difference is just massive.
well, but I think so this raises a good point, which is that unlike I think this past offseason where it was essentially like Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, or nothing, they're going to have some different places where they could look at to find a real starting point guard before next season. Two kind of quick ones, and then we'll close up with RJ. The draft. I don't think any of us think that they're going to keep all three of these picks on players that they will then like roster and try to work into their rotation or whatever next season. Jeremy, what do you think they're going to do with these picks? Do you think they would trade up? Do you think they trade out? Do you think where are you at on this?
No, I think they'll definitely consolidate to some degree. I think that based on the roster spots that are available and the talent that they want, it makes a lot of sense for them to at least move up. And it's going to, I guess the frustrating part is that you want the Knicks to continue winning games, but the reality is that there's a hard schedule. And as a result, that could very easily mean more losses, which then leads to better lottery odds, or at least just a better pick than you were expecting. And so it's this idea of like, well, if you get to like the 10, 11, 12 category, what does it take to move up? It's probably not the easiest thing. Top 5 is very much out of the question. But it's this idea of like, okay, well, if you were that willing to move up for Obi Toppin when you were picking 8th and you had the 23rd pick, then you're probably very comfortable consolidating picks to move up if you find someone and you feel that's your guy. So, and I think another option is, of course, trading out. We saw the Knicks do that as well, where at the 33rd pick in this past year's draft, wasn't anyone they felt was quality. They traded out. So at the end of the day, I do not expect 3 different players, and I'd like to see that 59th pick or whatever it turns out to be, the Sixers pick being some sort of draft rights, because I think that you can have that at your disposal really nicely compared to like, some
they just got to draft some
fucking
fucking loser that's going to stay over in Europe forever.
That's fine. Yeah. Do that. Then
that's what they got to do.
Help facilitate trades that way. It's beautiful. So, but yeah, I don't expect 3 players necessarily. I mean, we had 2 players this year, and one is getting enough playing time, but could be more. And the other is getting like maybe 10, 12 minutes a game. So that's Thib's MO. It's not playing rookies. It's playing his veterans. So stocking your roster full of guys who are going to take up time and money, or at least, have them and they're not going to see any playing time. I'd rather consolidate.
Yep. Shwin, you down with the consolidation?
Yeah, I would. There's no shot they're taking 3 rookies. I think Tibbs will fucking have an aneurysm if he's handed 3 rookies.
I think he will too. Second quick one, and then like I said, close with RJ. Shwin, do you think Randle gets or not gets? Do you think he will sign an extension this summer?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I think he wants to be here. I think they want him here, and I mean, look, like I do think that there is he's had an amazing year. I think he is also acutely aware that he did not have amazing years before this, and I think he can. He's 26 now.
He is 26 years old. 26 years old and 128 days.
Yeah, locking in a contract now doesn't mean this is it. Like he gets a contract now, he's still going to hit the market again. And actually, what Jeremy said, like he locks in now, he can get a contract that ends in 2025 or whatever the fuck that date was.
So he can. I was just thinking about this. If he signs a 2+1 with a player option, he can hit the market again as a 9-year.
That's the big one, right? That's the 35.
Yeah, 0 to 6, 7 to 9, and then 10 to 10 plus. Yeah.
Right.
So this is his 7th year. So if he 8, 9, so then yeah, it couldn't. If he signed 2+1, we get him there.
Would a 2+1 be added on to? It wouldn't replace next year. It would get added on.
Correct.
Yeah, 2+1 would be added on.
Yeah, I think he's going to do that. I think that, like, yeah, this contract he's on, it's not exactly a pittance. 3 years, $63 million, it's pretty good money. but you get to lock in. He is like, I'm sure he's very aware that being the franchise player that he's become for the Knicks is helping out his bottom line. I think he likes that. I think he definitely is enjoying the perks of that. And I think that he likes, the Knicks definitely did a good job of making him feel like a central part of their program with stuff like getting in Kenny Payne, keeping Kenny Payne. That's a big thing. They kept
huge.
I think that's a really huge draw for him. I think that like him and RJ have really developed like a pretty solid on-court bond. I don't know what their personal bond is like, but it seems pretty good for
this whole team seems pretty tight. So I think it's probably
except for fucking loser SF. But like, yeah, I think I think he's going to do it. And I think it makes complete sense for a guy like how much would he get? What is a 2+1? Like what does that guaranteed dollars look like? 60 million, something like that. 64.
No, the max that he could sign for next year is again,
Mommy's phone?
Where's mommy's phone? I don't know.
I have it.
Jeremy has it.
I stole it. I'm sorry, Scarlett Ray.
He says he's sorry. That was fun. We were going back and forth to this a few weeks ago about whether his max incorporates this year's base salary or it incorporates this year's base salary plus the incentives that he's hit already or may hit if they make the playoffs. It's roughly something that starts at 20 $5, $6, $7 million in that range. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing too is you can get him if you also lay out a clear-cut plan.
Yeah.
Because what's the one thing that Randle has not been able to taste throughout his entire career? It's the playoffs.
Yep.
And if you lay out a plan that's like, we want to pay you this much, we would then have cap space to do this. We're going after this. This is how we're going to do that. That is how you can make him feel like he has a role. And if you incorporate him into your greater plans and say, we want to build around you. I mean, what player doesn't want to hear that, right? What player doesn't want to know that my team wants to know how they can emphasize my strengths and build around me? That's a really awesome thing, especially in a place like New York.
And he hasn't had that. Like he's kind of been this like
he was an afterthought.
He's been his career is like super weird, right? Like,
very strange career.
7th overall pick, injured first year, then he like comes back to this. They do the weird like Kobe farewell thing. He's got to play with D loser. Then he's got they do the Luke Walton Ingram stuff. Like it's just, and then he goes to New Orleans for a year. Then he's got like the fucking Fizdale experience in New York. He's got a very odd career, and I think this is like the first time where he has a situation where it's a good coach, it's a stable situation. I mean, he's talked about repeatedly like how every day they come in, every game, like they're prepared and they know exactly what to expect. Mm-hmm. And as much as we despise some of that, what that entails with Thibs, like there's obviously really attractive parts of that for certain players.
Yeah.
I think that matters. And I think that like, look, like, I mean, let's like, I'm really not trying to like make a joke about how irrelevant the Nets are, but like Julius Randle has more pull in the tri-state area than any of those three guys. He does. Like he matters more in the tri-state area.
I think more people in the tri-state area care about what Julius Randle does on a game-to-game basis than care about what those three guys do.
Yeah. And I think like if like I promise you, if the Knicks just like if they get into the playoffs this year, and let's say next year they make the step up that we're talking about, like the 4 or 5 seed. If they win a playoff series, they're gonna fucking put this guy's face on like every single billboard. They'll probably do it if they just make the playoffs this year. He'll be on every billboard everywhere. So like I just think that like the Knicks haven't had like the last time the Knicks had a star, it was Melo, who was already a star, right? Like he didn't come to New York and become a star. He was already a star. Everybody knew who Melo was before he came to New York. Porzingis never it was too short a time. It was too weird, a whole thing. Just never really like. I think this is the first time you're gonna see like a guy like holy shit, like this is opening up so many doors for me. He already has like a fucking national ad for Hanes or something. I think I forgot what it was. I've seen a couple of his national ads. I have
not noticed that yet.
Yeah, and I just think that like I do think that the Knicks are in a really good situation. And I'll say this. I think that the Knicks have a much better chance of extending Randle than the Bulls do of extending Zach LaVine. I'm almost positive of that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Randle, like for as much as good as he's been in New York, the way he's playing, it's not as easy to just slide him in next to like, I don't know.
No, he's a unique fit, and I think the proof of concept that he's gotten to experience here under Tibbs, I think is going to matter a lot. And a big part of that also is he has a guy that he knows he can play with, and this will be where we finish up. And then
Elfrid Payton.
Yes, of course. So my favorite topic, RJ Barrett.
Your fifth favorite topic, you mean?
just when you think you know your
would you rather
friends.
Talk about the unprotected 2022 Knicks pick or Obi Toppin or RJ Barrett?
Hey, listen, give me credit where I'm right. I was right about the Mavs pick. For all the shit you gave me about that, I was right. I'm going to be right about that.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It's not over yet. And we'll see. Listen, and in fairness, we'll see about RJ. In terms of not, is he going to be a really good player? We know at this point he's going to be a really good player. I think at this point, the only question is ceiling. Before this season, gun to my head, I think I probably would have said that he was not going to develop into an all-star level player. And that looks pretty silly. Now, which is why I said if he ended up having a Karis LeVert like career, my words were probably something along the lines of I did not think that would be the worst outcome.
I think you're, and correct me if I'm
wrong. You'll remember better than me because I don't remember shit.
Your direct quote was, if RJ Barrett ever becomes as good as Karis LeVert, I would be stunned because Karis LeVert.
Oh, I did not use the word stunned. I did not.
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I'm almost positive you called Karis LeVert Michael Jordan.
Okay, I think I said I would.
I think you actually said Michael Jordan was just an early version of Karis LeVert.
That's exactly what this is. This is just great. Make sure you're getting all this down in pen. I certainly said that I satisfied with that outcome. I would be, that's the outcome I'm more or less expecting. And that looks silly because the pedigree, the work ethic, the it factor. God, I love that shot that he hit with like 3.5 minutes left last night.
And never got another shot.
And he never got another shot. Man, Jesus. He did not miss a shot in the fourth quarter, by the way. He hit his only 3 shots that he took. And they were all big. Yeah, he's got it. That said, I still don't know where I'm at in terms of his ceiling. We did the pod the other day with Mike Jacobs, and Mike Jacobs set RJ's over-under for all-star appearances at 6.5. I think I said it at 2.5. Jeremy was more like 6.5. Shwin, what would your over-under for all-star? Not that all-star is like the be-all, end-all, and plus, like, he plays in New York, and if you do well in New York and teams well in New York, maybe slightly better chances. But
already slandering RJ right there a little bit, if you notice, guys.
There you go.
Yeah, he's just gonna make it because he's a Knick. I think 6.5 is pretty good. Look, I think that he's. I don't think like he's not a guy. I don't expect him to come back next year and all of a sudden he's like, fucking. He looks like
Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, like I think he is a slow burn. He's going to
that's fair.
Keep getting better incrementally. And one day on his second contract, which is hopefully not a max because Brock Aller's a genius and you get him locked in at below max rate. I think all of a sudden in like year 5 or year 6, a lot of people are going to look really, really fucking stupid about their RJ takes because he's going to be averaging like 24, 6, 5 on, whatever, fucking 48, 37 splits or some shit. Like he is just a guy. He wants it too bad. He wants to be great too bad. He cares too much about this shit. He's psychotic. I think he's even developing the whole like I think that Anthony Edwards thing really bothered him. And I think
it bothered enough to tweet, and he does not tweet.
He does not tweet. I think that's bookmarked. I think that is like one of those things he files away, and this summer after he's worked out for like 6 hours and he looks like this ball, like just this ball of muscle, and he's tired, he's going to look at that tweet and be like, all right, I got another 6 hours in me now. Like, I just think he is so focused on it. And I don't know. I would be stunned if he's not, I just think that it's going to happen. He's going to end up being just a really elite player for the Knicks.
Jeremy, final thought on RJ?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the opportunity's there. It was great seeing him get those opportunities last night. Having the ball in his hands, being able to make decisions, that's going to pay off significant dividends. My thoughts, I think he's great. I'm also very curious to see what the financial situation is like in terms of if he's going to take that max contract, if it's even going to be offered, if he and Randle, what type of level of sacrifice these guys are willing to make from a financial perspective, because they know that if they just do a little bit here and there, it can actually add up to a significant amount where they can create space for someone. So I love RJ. It's been a pleasure seeing him at the tender age of 20, 4 years older than me, doing great things. But it'll be fun to continue that next year. And I'll probably slap a little bit down for him to win Most Improved Player, because why not?
I will say this. I think this is probably the first time anybody said this. I don't care. I think I might have said it in Slack a few weeks ago. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Cry about it.
That's the spice that you come to the Knicks Film School podcast for. Oh wait, no, this is the half that's on Pod Strickland. Well, that's appropriate. That is the spice that you come to Pod Strickland for. Okay, we got to get out of here. One of my kids or both of them need to go to bed. Shwin, thank you for coming on. It is genuinely always a pleasure to shoot the shit with you. Anything you want to? I've been plugging. Well, no, this is your pod, so you don't have to plug anything.
I don't need to plug anything.
You don't need to plug anything.
Yeah, actually, I should be the one bringing us home, if anything.
True.
Bring us home,
John. It was a pleasure having you on the Strickland's mailbag, but not really mailbag today. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, listen to the podcast that I do with the guy who just asked me if I want to plug anything. Also, Knicks Film School YouTube channel. Check it out after games. And that's the best place where you could find the link to our merchandise store, where we're now selling all sorts of paraphernalia with the Knicks Film School logo on it. So check that out.
Very cool. And John didn't want to say this on air, but actually the Strickland will be getting a cut because of the free advertising that we just provided.
There you go.
So
65%. There you go.
Yes.
And it's great for me because I get to double dip.
Yep.
So
Jeremy actually is going to make 135%.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, I'll bring us home instead. So thank you so much for John being on the show. Shwin, always a pleasure with you, good sir. Excited for 2 weeks' time when we will take mailbag questions once again. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you soon.